Hey, this is Nick Millivoy.
And this is Jason Shadrick.
And this is the 100 Guitarist Podcast, where each week we are talking about one of the 100 guitar players that we think you should know. Tell us about today's episode, Jason.
Today we have one of the few certified guitar players on Earth. And if you're not familiar with the CGP, that's a, what do you call it, an award bestowed upon
Designation.
Tommy. Designation, that's it. By Chet Atkins. Only gave it to a handful of people before he passed away. And Tommy Emmanuel was one of them. And this week we have Adam Miller, straight from the motherland of Newcastle, Australia, coming and talking to us about Tommy's playing and also giving us an insight as to how flippin' famous and huge he was in the early 90s in Australia. He was like the Justin Timberlake of Australia, apparently.
Who knew? Not us.
Who knew?
Australia.
Well, the thing is, you kind of know, but you don't really know until you hear it from somebody like Adam who lived through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no firsthand knowledge there.
No.
Well, Adam is an excellent guitar player who everybody, anybody who is interested in the guitar podcast should probably be checking out some of his stuff. So it's very exciting to have him on here, giving us that firsthand experience. But before we talk to Adam, we want to remind you, you can get at us by dropping us a line to 100guitarist@premierguitar.com. You can text or voicemail 319-423-9734. We will get your message. You will not have to deal with one of us on the phone. Nobody answers that line.
No, we save a lot of money on customer service here at 100 Guitarists Inc.
That's right. But we love to get your voicemails and hear your thoughts. So please get in touch. And while you're at it, don't forget to share your opinion of the 100 Guitarists Podcast by rating us and reviewing us wherever you find podcasts and liking and subscribing if you're watching here on YouTube. We also want to thank Maton Guitars for sponsoring today's episode. If you're familiar with Tommy Emmanuel, you know that he plays Maton guitars. Maton offers 3 versions of the Tommy Emmanuel signature model, all handmade in Australia. There's a team-built cutaway version, a team-built non-cutaway, and a master-built non-cutaway model that is crafted by a highly select group of veteran Maton artisan luthiers.
Yes. Tommy looks for a guitar with superb tone, capable of the most delicate expression, as well as the most ferocious attack, which we talk about. The neck must stay true regardless of the rigors of international travel, and the guitar needs to perform at its peak from Rome to Nashville to Sydney. And it has a AAA Select grade spruce top, Queensland maple back and sides, has a streaky ebony fretboard, scalloped X bracing, 21 frets. I mean, it is a beast of a guitar. So head on over to maton.com, that's maton.com.au, and check out the Tommy Emmanuel signature models.
All right, so we're going to bring on Adam now to tell us all his thoughts on Tommy Emmanuel.
Hey, everybody. So, Adam, you are joining us literally from the future, as we just talked about. So, all the way from Australia.
Yeah.
Today's guest is Adam Miller. How you doing, Adam?
Yeah, I'm doing so good. Thanks for having me up late.
Oh, of course. Anytime we can keep you from sleeping during the nocturnal hours in Australia.
Yeah,
we're up for it, man. We're up for it.
Definitely.
So you came on my radar years and years ago, probably through some NAMM videos, I think, when we first met. And It seems like every year we kind of just touch base. But recently you sent me an email that you have a new album coming out. So I want to talk about that first. So tell us when the record's coming out, what its name is, and kind of the story behind it a little bit.
It's coming out on April 18. It's named Timing. Basically, the record was done mid US tour. Actually, it was world tour, really. I went on to Europe and the UK after it. Mid world tour in LA with my LA band. And it was meant to be, a multi-day session, and then everything collapsed. So we got 5 hours in the studio from walking in to walking out. And I guess that's kind of why I called it Timing. But so it's with the guys that have played on my last 2 sort of trio records, Joel Gottschalk and Justin Glasgow. Joel on bass, Justin on drums. And they're just 2 of my best friends. And we went into the studio with predominantly all new material. They'd never played it before. And just sort of got it done. And we were only going to do a couple of songs in the end, but it ended up kind of just having this such a unique sound, and we got through way more material than I thought. So yeah, it just became one album. So
Are you the type of guy who wants to kind of have things develop in the studio, or did you go into those sessions because you knew the clock was ticking, so to speak, with everything kind of ready to go in terms of arrangements and tunes and all that?
No, I let things happen in the studio as they go. And especially with these guys, I trust what they're going to play, and I'm really excited to hear what they might interpret from what I've got. So I try to give them very little information.
Mhm.
Ultimately, I would rather have time to rehearse and get it up to speed. But, you know, we communicate so well musically, and even just with eyebrow movements and things, that it came together really quick, and that is an exciting thing. And I think my last couple of records have been very orchestrated, like, because they've been done remotely and back and forth, so we've had to not kind of have that immediate play off each other. So this was really exciting to be able to actually have that together.
Nice. And how
And
much?
where did you? So if you recorded in the middle of the tour, where did you end up recording? Did you
Yeah,
have like? Was there a destination studio in mind?
Well, Justin Glasgow is a producer, and so we recorded at his studio, which kind of doesn't have a name, but the drums are set up there all the time, so it's kind of easy to. That was the thing; we could just walk in and get it happening. And so Justin engineered it. We had an assistant engineer in, and then I took it back to Australia and mixed it all. Yeah.
Dig it. All right. So timing, April 18th. We'll put
Yeah.
links down below.
Mm.
Go check it out. And how much fun is it? How much fun do you have naming instrumental tunes? I'm always curious as to how guitarists and other musicians do this.
Yeah, for me, it's actually usually pretty easy, and it comes down. I really like thinking about what I was thinking in that moment, and I love the idea. I'm pretty deep about it, actually. I'm pretty casual in most things, but when I'm naming songs, it really is usually a very deep emotion of what was going on in the time, and I love the idea that then anyone can interpret something from that title. And I try to keep my titles pretty short, so they're usually like one word or two words. There are a few that are long on this album, though.
Are most of your album names one word too?
They have been recently a
Right?
little bit. Yeah. But I like that simple thing of, you know, instrumental music is a strange thing to a lot of people, but I grew up with it, which we'll talk about more in just a second. And I love the idea of people taking that piece of music and my rough leading title and then getting whatever they need out of that. It's cool.
Dig it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that segues perfectly into what we're talking about here because, you know, when I think of Australian guitar players, there's a short list, but both you and our guest and our topic are on that list. So tell us, growing up in Australia as a guitar player, when did you first kind of become aware of Tommy and his playing? Because for me, as an American, I just feel like Tommy is basically the guitar mayor of Australia, and everybody. I mean, I do get the feeling he's probably infinitely more famous in Australia than he is over here. But tell me about your early memories of hearing about him and seeing him play.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. I don't think it's the case anymore that he's as famous as he was when I was a kid. So I heard about Tommy Emmanuel about 3 weeks after I started learning guitar. So I'm going to guess this was like 1990. I would have to check exactly when his first single came. Well, the single from this first album I got came out. I know the album came out in 1990, Dare to Be Different. And essentially my mum had seen him on a sort of like a Tonight Show in Australia and just bought me the cassette. And so that Tommy was very mainstream. Essentially, like, he was on every show, every television show that had a musical guest. He was on either as him or as some, you know, a famous Australian pop artist at the time featuring Tommy Emmanuel. So it was kind of amazing. Like, and his albums in the 90s would go to top 5 in the pop charts. Wow. So he was kind of that well known. He, like, basically it was synonymous with guitar. Like in Australia, Tommy Emmanuel was like Eric Clapton. That was the name. Yeah. Yeah. Pretty amazing.
Wow. That's wild to imagine, like an instrumental guitar player holding such a high place in mainstream culture, right? Like I can't conceive of that in my life here.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And that's why so many Australian guitarists and ones that you guys would talk to just all know, like that was it wasn't the pinnacle, that was the standard, which was even scarier at the time. And
yeah.
In those days as well, Tommy was predominantly the Telecaster player, not the acoustic player that, you know, he's known for mainly now. So
right, because there was a shift. Like when we doing research for this, you know, there's the early albums obviously are more electric, and then at some point he kind of made a shift to almost exclusively playing acoustic instrumental music. Do you remember when that shift happened?
Yeah,
and what you thought about it?
Yeah, totally. So I definitely grew up with Tommy. Like, you know, to me, the music I love, and it's probably because it's the stuff I heard first, is the Telecaster music, and it is amazing to me. And we can get into those sort of albums later. But I know, you know, I've worked with Tommy a lot and know his history a lot. I know he wanted to always shift to more playing acoustic guitar, and it kind of happened around when he left Australia, actually. And I guess he just didn't have the network of band, and it was easier to tour solo, which I know well as well. But
still easier to tour solo.
It still is easier. And so the first album I think was Only that came out that was totally solo acoustic, which isn't widely available anymore. He's re-recorded a lot of those songs now on a different project, but that was pretty revolutionary to me at the time. So that came out probably 2000,
August of 2000.
Yep. Yeah, wow. It might have come out earlier in Australia, I think, for trivia, but which is, there's a few albums that have different names. I realized when I was doing a little research earlier today in the US to what they do in Australia. But but it was amazing, and it was an incredible songs, incredible playing, and a really incredible sound on that album as well.
So I'm curious, Adam, when was the first time that you learned one of Tommy's pieces, like note for note?
Well, for me, so here's the crazy thing. So I got his first album when I was 10 years old. I'd been playing guitar for not very long, and basically I was super into Billy Joel. And when I heard Tommy Emmanuel, I basically went, wow, I sound exactly the same, because I can't sing Billy Joel because my voice hasn't broken. So when I heard Tommy, I just played along with it. And so I just worked it all out by ear. I didn't know it was hard. I didn't know it was difficult. I just thought it was cool. So I think the first song I would have learnt was Guitar Boogie, his version of that, which was electric, but he plays it almost exactly the same on acoustic, to be honest. But that, and then Blue Moon, his solo arrangement of that. So yeah, like when I was 10, 11 years old, they weren't right.
Wow.
They're not like note for note arrangements, because there was no video, there was no access to tablature. Actually, there was tabs, but they were wrong. It was that era.
Yeah.
They weren't even close. And so, it was years later that I worked out how to play it properly. But I was trying to play it all from, when I was 10 years old with just a cassette with a stop and start button and rewind. Yeah.
And that arrangement of Blue Moon has, like, still to this day is a highlight of his live show. You know, I was just talking about that. I have a guitar student who's getting into fingerstyle, and we're just starting to kind of talk about the topic of how to play something and bring the melody out a little bit, even if it's just a simple arpeggio or something, right? And I told him to listen to that version of Blue Moon, because that is, like, when it comes to that style of acoustic fingerstyle playing and being able to play a melody out above the dynamics of what else you're playing underneath it on the same guitar, that's like a textbook example of that.
It's incredible. And it was probably my first exposure to a walking bass line. Like, it was like, that was like, oh, this is jazz to me. Like, at the time, I didn't, it was, that era, like, I've told my, students for many years, it wasn't like you had access to music. I didn't even have access to people that would give me music then. It was like, so my whole exposure to so many different styles of music was through Tommy Emmanuel, because that's all I owned. It was like, you want to learn how to play like Stevie Ray Vaughan, then you learn the song Stevie's Blues that Tommy wrote, which is kind of a version of Scuttlebutton, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he's your filter that you like learned about guitar from.
Yeah, totally. It was basically everything. And especially in those days where there was something like Blue Moon, there was Guitar Boogie on an album, there was there was stuff that was like, more like Satriani and those sort of like shred sort of things. And then just a whole array of different styles and tones and ways to play, because he was kind of just the man.
So you're like 11 years old, you're starting to learn some Tommy stuff, or at least starting to absorb from osmosis how to play some of that stuff. As you became a teenager and then on to a professional, when was the first time you saw him live or your paths crossed?
I first saw him live when I was about 11 years old, fortunately. Like, he just toured Australia with his band at the time. And it was a life-changing experience for me. It was like just so incredible to see that he could play these things in real life. I think, I'm trying to think. I know I went to a Billy Joel concert, and then the next concert I went to was Tommy Emmanuel.
Tommy.
Yeah. My mum was pretty hip in getting me to those things. I've got to thank her for that, which is awesome.
I thought for a second you were going to say I went to a Billy Joel concert and then Tommy showed up and sat in.
Yeah. Well, it would be that era as well. I wouldn't, he was doing all the supports for the big artists when they would tour Australia as well in that time. So yeah, I think I then got to see him again play about 5 or 6 years later when I was about 16. And then actually that tour was exclusively acoustic guitar. So he had bass, drums, and a string quartet, and acoustic guitar. He'd just done an album with the Australian Philharmonic Orchestra, and which I think is just what it's called, Tommy Emmanuel and the Australian Philharmonic Orchestra. Actually, it's probably called Classical Gas, the album.
Classical Gas, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And so that was the tour associated with that. So to try and bring that on the road, he took a string quartet, and that was pretty special.
That's a cool ensemble: guitar, bass, drums, acoustic guitar, bass, drums, and string quartet. That's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. And these shows were like in strange little community halls and things like that at the time. It wasn't like concert halls and that sort of thing. So that was cool. And then I'm pretty sure the next time I saw him play was in 2000 on that tour for the album Only, playing solo, and I was opening the show, and I met him that day as well. So that was a total nightmare, but it was great.
What was it like when you got the call to open for him?
Well, I just harassed his manager at the time. I would say it was probably
it was not a random call.
It was not a random call. It was like one of the first emails I ever tried to look up was when I got access to email. It was like, how do I contact Tommy Emmanuel so I can chat to him or play with him or something? So they announced a tour in Australia. They announced a show in Newcastle, where I live still now, and I asked if I could open the show, and crazily enough they said yes, and I'd never played a solo acoustic show really at that point. So I had 8 weeks to
oh boy,
get it together.
How old were you at this time?
19.
Oh man,
that
is a big task to have ahead of you at that age. Yeah. Did you just cancel all your plans for 2 months?
No, I think I was still like playing a lot and doing things. I know I was at university as well at that time. So yeah, it was amazing. It was just like this unbelievable thing of like, I say I was listening to someone play, well, it was half my life at that point. And then to get to meet them and then to play before them, And I played one of Tommy's really old songs that I knew he wouldn't play in his set as well. And I got off stage and he said, "So you played that wrong. Here's how it goes." And it was great.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So, but yeah, really special time to do that and to see him do his solo acoustic show for the first time ever. And it's hard to, if people haven't seen him play live, one of the biggest things about Tommy's shows is literally the sound when you're in the room with it. Like his guitar is loud. Like when he taps the bridge of the guitar, your heart palpitates just a little bit. It's like, whoa, it hits you hard. And that whole experience is kind of part of it. It was, yeah.
I mean, it seemed like, obviously you'd mentioned for economical and logistical reasons, it's always easier to tour solo. But it seems like when he really started, because I wasn't aware of him until probably right around that Only record, I think. Because I started playing in the mid-90s. And there was one record he put out, I think was it on Steve Vai's label, maybe? Maybe it was that. And
I think it was that. It did end up coming out on that label. Yeah. And
I'd only for a long time, I only knew of him as a solo acoustic guitar player. But then, and I didn't see him probably until it had to been maybe 10 or 15 years ago was the first time I saw him play, you know. But just the energy that he puts into just him, you know, he's not like a classical player who will sit on a stool and sit there and play his perfectly rehearsed. Like he gets into it. He's not worried about if a string buzzes or something, you know, he hits it hard and he really brings the audience in, unlike few solo guitar players, you know, because up at that point, when I think of solo guitar, non-classical, you're thinking of Joe Pass, where he's sitting on a stool and just playing around or something, you know. But rarely, if any, solo, especially acoustic guitar players, has the energy that he puts in to his shows, like bar none. I mean, that alone is worth the trip, you know, even if you aren't up on his massive catalog of tunes. Well, you can always guarantee he's going to play a song, you know.
Something, you know. He's going to play something at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, at some point, right? And he's going to be all over the stage and he's going to put out so much energy.
Yeah.
So if you can check those boxes, it's totally worth going to see. And he plays like 100 and some shows a year at his age. I mean, it's incredible.
It might be more. You know, there was definitely a time where it was like 250 shows a year. And it is that intensity. I think the way I see it is it comes from playing pubs in Australia. Like it's this thing, no one cares here. Like literally no one cares. And so the only way you can get people to pay attention is to go that hard. And I think you see that sort of veracity in most kind of Australian guitarists that come out because most of us have grown up listening to Tommy Emmanuel and seeing that and had to play in Australian pubs at some point where it really is a fight to get things across. And, you know, like I even look at the way like, you know, Keith Urban plays, you know, on the other end of the scale, who did 20 years around Australian pubs, that same sort of thing, you know, delivers with that sort of intensity all the time. It's cool. Yeah.
Interesting.
So you mentioned Dare to Be Different, and we've talked about Once. What are some other highlights from Tommy's catalog that you would point people to from a guitar perspective? Because I have one or two albums I want to talk about, but I want to hear Adam from a real Australian.
Yeah. Well, I've got to go back to those old albums because people aren't aware of them. You know, the one after Dare to Be Different called Determination is amazing. It's, you know, production's a little dated, but the guitar playing and the songs on it are awesome. Whenever Tommy and I play together, I actually get him to play Determination with me, which is kind of this sort of fusion suspended blues thing.
Nice.
And it's really fun to play that tune. It also has Initiation on it, which is an incredible piece. Like it's solo acoustic, but uses a lot of delays and percussive stuff. And it was one of those things of really where people were like, that can't be one person playing. It's not physically possible. And it's a bit of a work of art.
Great
Actually,
album cover.
Yeah.
You know,
Just
with the
smoke.
guitar necks and the shadows.
Yeah. It's a classic. The next one, I would say, which was probably a huge impact on me personally, is I think it's called Midnight Drive in the US. It's called Can't Get Enough in Australia.
Okay.
But
It's Can't Get Enough over here too.
it is that now. Yeah, I
Yep.
think they re-released it as that. But it was it's very fusion. He plays acoustic guitar on the whole album, but he has all these guests on it. And honestly, it was the first time I'd ever heard of these people. So I think track 1 is Larry Carlton as a guest. Robin Ford is later in the album with one of the best Robin Ford solos I've ever heard still. And that was my first time ever experiencing Robin Ford. I can't well, Chet Atkins is on it, I'm pretty sure, as well. But yeah, it was an amazing
Nathan
album.
East is on there.
Nathan East is on, but yeah, Tom Breckline, I think, plays drums on it. Yeah, it's pretty epic. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and then there's so many kind of individual tracks and arrangements he has. Like, one of my favorites is, wow, full circle, his arrangement of the Billy Joel song "And So It Goes," which is on the album The Mystery. Yeah, and it's spectacular. It's just one of the most beautiful arrangements, and that particular recording is just so pristine of the acoustic guitar. It's magnificent.
And that's the other thing on his records, especially his more recent ones, is that the studio ones, is that his guitar sounds so good.
Yeah,
You know, it's how clear and how much presence and clarity is in his playing. And remind, is he use finger picks, or is he just all straight thumb pick and fingers?
all of it. Actually, so the main thing is he is flesh on his fingers.
Yeah.
So it's not nail, but yeah, thumb pick, and then sometimes flat pick. So it just varies from song to song. But
right.
Yeah, he was also, going back like to the 70s and 80s, pretty much the number one session guy in Australia. So he's just been, had experience with recording for so long, and is so particular about first the sound that's coming out of him as, the player, and then very aware of, where the microphones are and to make it work, and, surrounds himself with good engineers to make that happen.
Yeah. So Nick, you did some deep diving on this. What albums did you come across that
I spent less time focusing on albums and more focusing on, like, jumping around his albums. I found a lot of great stuff I like, but the stuff that so I've never seen Tommy play. Okay. And all that I know of his work, I know a couple tracks, handful of tracks here and there. I knew, I guess the first time I ever heard his name was from the day the Fingerpickers took over the world. And just, being into Chet and hearing the two of them play together and thinking that's a cool combination. Before I even really thought about him too much, I worked in a music store starting when I was a teenager, and we had just like an endless Chet Atkins playlist, but the Ode to Mel Bay that's on there was like something that would come on and everybody would always think was funny, because all the guitar teachers were teaching out of the Mel Bay book, and that I learned out of the Mel Bay book. And that's probably one of the only pop culture references to Mel Bay that exist. So that sort of stuck in my head. And I'll say, like, I didn't know for a long time that Tommy was even Australian. It wasn't until I heard him speak, was like, oh, this guy's not from Nashville. Like, because I only knew him from this Chet Atkins record. He sort of got lumped into this like Nashville thing for me. And then, oh, surprise, that's not his deal. So it took a long time before I was really like checking his stuff out. And for me, I found him through YouTube and social media. And so when I first heard him, it came as this like fully developed package, like where it's just like, who's this guy who's like obviously well into his career, who's like the greatest fingerstyle guitar player I've ever heard. Like, what is this story? And I had to dig deep and find out, like, oh, this guy's been around forever, obviously because of the way he played. But yeah, nobody hipped me to him as a kid or anything. I learned about him only as an adult. And so that was like, that's the way that I know him best. And when I've gone to albums, I like a lot of the albums, but I like watching him play more. He's so, like I was telling Jason this earlier, like you know, we talked about it already, but the physicality in his playing delivers so much where it's like, it's so obviously not theatrics. It's so obviously like he's feeling it. And it, I think like if I weren't a guitar player, that would still be exciting and dramatic, but like, you know, watching that as a player, you know, when he's like going for something and he's, you know, making faces going for it, it's like, it's real. He's going for this thing. He's trying to execute something. Or every now and then you get a video where you're like, I don't know that he like misses, but he like, you know, he's going, you know, you'll hear him like, you know, he didn't fully execute or something. And I think that's the coolest thing, because it's like, even at this like highest level, he seems to always be pushing, and he seems to always be like looking for the boundary of where he can take whatever he's performing. And to me, that's like, you know, like you were saying, Joe Pass is, you know, he's not just sitting there, he's in the music and he's feeling it. I was watching, I had never seen his version, or never heard his version of Burt Bacharach's Close to You before. And it's like, there's a video where he's just like in the middle, he just is like softly singing the words along with it. And you're like, you know, it's just, he's just in the moment. That's what's in his head. That's what's coming out. That's like just part of like executing the music, is like really feeling it. And those moments in any guitar player are so special to me, that's what I enjoy the most out of his playing. I'm going to go see him. He is coming through. I think it's not till the fall, but I'm going to see him for the first time in the fall. I'm really inspired to go see the live show.
Oh, it's going to be great, man.
Yeah,
And
his
for
command
me,
of, oh, sorry. I was just going to say, his command of melody is really the thing. Like, and that's what I sort of always got. It's like when he learns an arrangement or does an arrangement, he knows every lyric. And one of the great things is that if it's got two verses, you'll hear that the second verse inflects the lyric differently when he plays the melody, because he knows it that well. And then from a technical point of view, he's kind of the master of mixing his guitar. Like, the melody always sits on top. The accompaniment is in the back, and you don't notice it until you start to get really deep on it and go, wow, it's just like he's the perfect mix engineer between all the parts just within his hand. And that's kind of just what makes it so relatable and get across to everyone.
Yeah.
And I think of him like almost in the same way that another one of our mutual friends, Adam, I think of Charlie Hunter, is that you can play with Tommy Emmanuel in a duo, and it doesn't matter what instrument you're playing. You could be on trumpet or harp or kazoo or flute or guitar, and he will cover whatever he needs to. He's like one of the most perfect collaborators, and I think that's why he does so many collaborations. The first time I know I talked to him I interviewed him was for the Colonel and the Governor record, which he did with Martin Taylor.
That's great. Yeah.
You know, I really like his the album he did with David Grisman. That's a real fun one. But probably my favorite, because you Adam, you kind of took the older stuff. Nick, you kind of picked around the newer stuff. I would go all the collaboration stuff, like the album he did with John Knowles. If you're not familiar with John Knowles, he was a contemporary of Lenny Breau and Chet Atkins way back in the day. Incredible nylon string player. They did a great record called Heart Songs. And then Tommy's two accomplished records, you know, and he has everybody from Jason Isbell to Bryan Sutton to, you know, Rodney Crowell and Jerry Douglas and Jake Shimabukuro and Jack Pearson, Susie Boggess. I mean, tons of people, and you can just kind of hear that no matter what the other person is bringing to the collaboration, he knows exactly what to do to fill out the rest of the song, and that to me, for me, is because I feel like, okay, my fingerstyle playing is never going to be as virtuosic as him, but there are little snippets that he does. Maybe it's like, for me, one thing that I really like to warm up on is just him playing the riff to Day Tripper, like just that.
Oh
Just
man,
how he
yeah,
plays
that is
Day
so
Tripper,
cool,
like
the way he plays it.
that is something that's not like that. It's within grasp, I think, for most people as to how to play just the riff, not the whole arrangement, but just the intro riff to Day Tripper. How you have the eighth notes going on the top two strings, and you're playing the riff with your
I
thumb
don't
and
know.
your
I
finger.
think that's pretty hard, man.
Well, I mean, if you do it slow enough, Adam, one day you'll get it, buddy. Okay.
Well, I'm trying. That's a funny one that I learned when I was so young, and I learned that I'd never heard Day Tripper. That's how I heard Tommy playing it long before I heard the Beatles playing it, and I had the riff wrong forever, and my brain is still wired into this wrong accent of the riff when I try and play the top part, but. It's an incredible groove.
But it's a way, I mean, I treat it as like an etude or an exercise. Like it's eighth notes with these two fingers, and then you're just playing the riff underneath. And I play it super slow, and it's so much fun to kind of go through his catalog and find little snippets like that. Like maybe it's just the first little bit of Blue Moon or something, or how he uses a chord in a certain thing, or guitar boogie where he's playing that boogie pattern below, and he's a similar thing. He's playing some kind of melody up the top,
Yeah.
That to me is how I can get the most inspiration and instruction out of what he's playing, is taking little tiny snippets and turning them into my own little half speed exercises. Because when he lets loose, man, it's hard to. The guy has a limitless amount of energy. I can't imagine Adam being up there playing with him, and you're playing guitar boogie or something. And you just like keep going. And
I've never played guitar boogie with him. I wouldn't be that stupid. But it is terrifying, and he's always been a giant.
Tell us about playing with him.
So the first time when I first toured with him, I didn't play anything with him for the first couple of years. They were sort of interspersed things in Australian tours, and then. I think it was about 4 years later, I played a couple of songs with him during his set, and it was, I don't know, it was terrifying. Fortunately, I'd just already played what I'd done, and it was cool. And then, so that was 2004, and I hadn't played anything with him until I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. And I remember being on stage with him. I just did a on-stage interview with him. And then at the end, we were like, do you want to play something together? And I'm like, I'm terrified. I was like so scared. We just played a blues. We didn't even try to play a song because we hadn't discussed it. But it was, it was really scary. Because he doesn't hold back. He's like the most supportive person. And like you're saying, Jason, like he knows exactly what to play and to play around everyone and to make it work. But then when he goes for it, he's not like coming down to your level. He's just going, well, this is where I can go. So I'm going to take it there and give everything. He's all about the audience and the show. So it's like, I'm going to give everything to this audience that we can. So yeah, it's pretty special, but it is quite daunting. Yeah. I did this camp with him a little while ago in Australia, like one of his teaching camps. And, so many of the students got up to play with him. And I was like, guys, I would not be asking to do this, but, so many, like they just loved it. And he was so supportive of him. It was amazing. But yeah, incredible.
That's great. So moral of the story is go see him live. Go check out his records. There's bound to be something, even if you're not a super fan of instrumental acoustic guitar, there's going to be something there that I think you can connect with, from pop to jazz to just about everything in between. So,
yeah, I think so.
So tell us more, Adam, about what your plans are for these next couple of months. You got this new album coming out. I always see, every time I turn around, you're touring somewhere. So tell us what you got coming up.
Trying to. So I'm, touring Australia towards the end of May. which isn't a lot because Australia is very big but doesn't have a huge population. So it's a bit of a tour around Australia happening. Then I'll be back in the US in August and probably November, and then hopefully Europe somewhere in the middle. But, it's just a lot of computer time. So I've just got to get into it and make it work. So, but if anyone wants to see me play, shoot me an email.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Adam, thanks again, man. We'll talk to you
My
soon.
pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Adam. All right. So thanks again to Adam Miller for jumping on a call very late at night in Australia.
From the future.
Yeah. Early in the morning for us, just, normal work hour morning time. But, he's living on the edge of time right there. So thank you, Adam. Check out Adam's music. He's fantastic. I got to hear, yep. I've never seen Adam play, but I got to hear him play at NAMM a little bit, and he's excellent. Before we get out of here, we want to do our semi-regular recurring current listening segment because we both have stuff we're excited to talk about. I'm going to go first this time because I think you have a bigger selection. I don't have an album to talk about today. I have a song to talk about today, or rather a couple songs. This references, when this comes out, it'll be a couple episodes in the future, or a couple episodes ahead of our Dick Dale episode. And, when we were listening to that, we talked a little bit about guitar players who really take that influence somewhere. And, I talked a little bit about the Egyptian guitar player Omar Khorshid and how he took Dick Dale's sound and applied it to Middle Eastern music. Well, that's a whole tradition that continued to move on its own. There's a New York-based guitar player, Amit Peled, who has been developing that approach to guitar. He calls it Mediterranean surf. And that's basically what it is. He's incorporating a lot of various types of approaches to guitar playing, non-Western guitar playing, and that includes guitar players like Omar Khorshid. I think there's definitely Dick Dale in there, like the guitar player Aris San, and some other guys. And I've been seeing Amit play the guitar for, I don't know, more than 15 years in various bands that he has played in. And he's always had just the highest level of technique. I've always been blown away by Amit's technique and how unique it sounds. And he's really, really dialed this in with his most recent project called Habbina Habbina. They don't have an album yet. But on May 1st, they released another single. They have a couple singles, so you can find Habbina Habbina on streaming services. You can find them on their YouTube channel. You can give them. They're a great follow on Instagram because there's a lot of live footage of them playing, which I think is. I haven't seen this band play live. They haven't come through Philadelphia yet. But I know what it's like to hear Amit play in other bands, and this band is so focused and so dialed into that. I think Mediterranean surf is a really good description for it, but lots of reverb, lots of tremolo, lots of really articulated phrasing, and has this encapsulates this punk energy into the surfy kind of sound, but with Middle Eastern scales and cool time signatures and stuff like that. A lot of traditional songs. Definitely one of the things I'm most excited about in guitar music these days. Anytime I see that they've put out a new single or they put out a new performance video, I'm super stoked because I think that Amit is on to something new. And last year at NAMM, I did a Reverend video with Ken Haas, and Amit plays a Reverend, and I mentioned Amit, and he was like, that guy? That guy's a freak. He's a total freak. He is a total freak. And I think the buzz is out about Amit, and there's a lot of really special things to come. So check out Habbina Habbina.
Dig it. I'm going to check that out. We're going to put links to these down in the description. My pick is an album that was surprise released last week.
Oh.
It's a live album. It was surprise released last week on the 1-year anniversary of the gig that produced this record.
Okay.
And it's live at the Legion with Billy Strings and Bryan Sutton.
Oh, okay.
So Billy Strings playing arenas, playing bluegrass. Bryan Sutton, incredible session bluegrass player. He's played on everything from Dixie Chicks and Dolly Parton to you name it. He's kind of really, Bryan is really kind of the link between Tony Rice and Billy Strings.
Okay.
And so they like
that.
the day of April 7th or whatever, the day of, they just post, hey, we're playing at the American Legion tonight. Tickets or whatever, and of course, it's an American Legion hall. There's probably only a couple hundred people. They show up, and it's just two of them sitting on chairs or stools or whatever, just two acoustic guitars, calling tunes and playing fiddle tunes, playing Doc Watson tunes, and it's such a pure, like, bluegrass guitar record. Like,
okay. That
there's
sounds great.
No drummer, no effects, no trickery. It's just two people sitting down and playing tunes. And it is so great. It's about an hour and a half. And as far as I know, it's the whole gig. Yep. And they did also, when they dropped this record, they did also announce a tour this fall that they're going to go on, a duo tour.
Oh, nice.
So
American
if you want to get
Legions only?
Yeah, just American Legions. So if you want to get into bluegrass, find out really kind of what the essence of that sound is on acoustic guitar, this is an album I would definitely point you to, especially the track, the medley at the end, Give the Fiddler a Dram, Whistling Rufus, Ragtime Annie. It's burning.
I like that we're both contributing to very different but traditional takes on guitar music.
Yes.
It's kind of exciting.
It's going to be great. So thanks again to Adam Miller for joining us today. So you can get at us at 100guitarist at premierguitar.com, and you can call or text us at 319-423-9734. Let us know what your favorite Tommy Emmanuel track is, or what your favorite album you're listening to is. Maybe we should do that sometime.
Oh, yeah.
People call in, tell us what you're listening to, what we should check out, and if it passes muster, we'll put it on the show.
Yeah, I love that. Most exciting guitar music you've heard recently.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, we'd like to thank Maton for sponsoring today's episode. Check out Maton Guitars at maton.com.au. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.